Hello everyone. Thank you for coming back to my channel. My name is Dick Fleming. I was a member of First Force Recon during the Vietnam War, and I wrote about my experiences in a book called Chasing Charlie, which is available on Amazon. You might like it. I also have a website called firstforcerecon.com, which is a resource for the recon community, some photographs and links to other websites. So that's might be of interest to you. Today, what I'd like to tell you about is an experience I had on Razorback Ridge, which was a long, narrow ridge high up in the mountains, overlooking the Ho Chi Minh Trail. This location had been used by our teams for quite a while because it was easily defended. The ridge was so steep that it would be hard for the enemy to attack us, and if necessary, because the ridge line was clear, we could get extracted by helicopter. So that was a pretty good location, and we were inserted there on the base of Razorback Ridge, and we made our way up. And as we moved up further and further along the hill, it got steeper and steeper until eventually we were pulling ourselves up by the branches that came out of the side of the hill. And for every step that we took, we probably lost one or two because we kept slipping down this slope. You know, we should have really had ropes in order to do that climb. It was that steep, but we didn't. We didn't have ropes, so we had to work with what we had. So we made our way up, and we were nearing when we clambered over the last few hundred feet, and we finally made it to the top. We could see that there was a trail running along the top of the ridge line there, which probably had been used for centuries by either the Montagnards or now the North Vietnamese were probably using it to move troops around that area without having to descend into the jungle below. And I have to say, it was a beautiful spot. And we got up on top, we could see for miles, and the jungle around us, it was so green and lush. The valleys were deep, and you could see rivers running through them. The clouds, we were up so high in the mountains that the clouds were actually down in the valley, and you could see them spreading on either side of the hillside as the wind took them. It was just beautiful. And we started moving along the trail. That was something we didn't do very often, but we felt fairly secure because there's no way that people could climb, that the enemy could climb those that steep terrain without having us see them. So we felt pretty secure, and actually we made good time. As we were moving across that ridge line, we were covering ground because we didn't have to descend into the valleys and clamber through the jungle and force our way through all of the jungle vegetation. It was pretty sparse up there, and the trail itself was completely clear. We felt like we had 7-league boots on. We were traveling so well. Almost feeling of gods up there in the sky with all the clouds down below, and it was just a lovely, lovely place. Well, it was starting to get dark, and we were nearing the summit, and the lieutenant decided that we would stay there near the summit and set up an observation post the next day, and maybe even do a prisoner snatch if we could see anyone coming along that trail. So he told Bo and I to set up claymores to protect us on either side of the trail as the rest of the team went down the slope about maybe 100 yards to where there was starting to get some thick underbrush down there, and that's where they started to set up for the night. And Bo and I set up our claymores, and then we started to run our lines down. Now we had extension lines on the claymores, but they were only good for maybe 150 200 feet at the most. So when I looked down, I could see the other guys. They were setting up in a V-type formation. Each one had picked out a tree and had put their legs between the tree, and they were stopping themselves from tumbling off down the slope. Normally we'd be in a circular pattern, everybody facing outward and every direction being protected by a marine. But in this case, we were a formation like a V, a spear or an arrowhead formation. And as Bo and I finished setting up the claymores and we getting our lines together, we realized that we probably couldn't make it all the way down to the rest of the team, but nearly so, almost. But still, we'd be at the very top of the spear there. So we went down. We found, each one of us found, Bo and I found a tree of our own, and we straddled it. We leaned back against that very steep slope and shrugged off our packs and most of our web gear, and staked them down to the ground so that they wouldn't tumble off down the slope. I was particularly concerned about my rifle, my M16. I didn't want that to go missing. So I had a V stick that I stuck the barrel in, and the stock I set down tightly with my K-bar so that I wouldn't be surprised when to go for my weapon and find it had tumbled off down the slope. Well, every 2 hours we had to do a sit rep, a situation report. The base camp would call in, forefather, sit rep. And the person who was on communications duty would click 3 times with their radio handset, and they'd know we were okay. And we'd rotate that every 2 hours generally. And so I had gotten a couple hours sleep, and then Bo handed me the handset, and he was getting ready to go to sleep. All the other men had eaten already. They opened a can in turn, one person at a time, very quietly and softly, opening a can of sea rations and then eating beanies and weenies or whatever whatever meat they put into those sea rations, like hard to eat. Well, so they, had we each had a little bit to eat and a little bit to drink, and we wrapped ourselves up in those silk blankets that we had bought from the vendors in Da Nang to keep the rain off. And it was raining. It was raining pretty hard. And when Bo handed me the receiver, and it had sort of gone down a few more feet, to get some rest himself, to go back to where his pack was. I heard something above me. It was a strange, soft padding noise, like hard to describe. But I realized it was getting closer and closer, and I reached over before Bo went away. I nudged him, and he woke up, alert, and whatever it was coming toward us. And actually, it was coming toward me, because I was the one at the very tip of the spear with my 2 igniters for the claymores in my hand. So I was at the very top, and the other guys were below me. And whatever it was coming down the slope toward me. And whatever it was big. I knew that. I could tell just by the way it sounded. It was heavy and big. And it wasn't making any particular attempt to be quiet either. It was whatever it was. I knew my little K-bar, the 6-inch blade, was no match for whatever was coming down the slope toward me. Well, I still couldn't see anything. It was pitch black. It was raining hard, and a thunderstorm had started. And suddenly, a flash of lightning struck the sky, and for a split second I could see 20 feet in front of me the shape of this tiger. A tiger. Well, at that point I had my M16 and I put it on full automatic. It was only about 20 feet away from me, and I opened up on full automatic, and with that I felt and heard something over my head, and I raised my weapon like this as whatever it was went over. The tiger jumped over me and disappeared into the darkness behind me. Well, the entire team, of course, at that point was on high alert. Their adrenaline was going. My adrenaline was going too. And the lieutenant climbed up the slope toward me and said, "What the hell did you do?" And we were supposed to have, complete silence, never supposed to fire without reason. We're supposed to use your knife if you were attacked at night. Otherwise you'd give away the position. Well, I told him, "The tiger, sir." Looked at me, have you lost your fucking mind? I said, "There was a tiger, sir. I saw him." He goes, "Listen, Fleming, we better find the body of a tiger down there tomorrow morning or your ass is grass." Well, it rained all night, and in the morning we didn't find any blood. We didn't find any markings. Certainly didn't find the body of a tiger. And my ass was grass when we got back to our base camp, because I was on work details for a couple of weeks, for firing a weapon without authorization. I didn't care. What could I do, right? Well, the lieutenant didn't believe me, and I really don't blame him. I don't know whether I believe the story myself. And Bo didn't see what I saw. He didn't see the tiger, so he couldn't. He said he heard something. He heard it, but he couldn't see it. Couldn't verify my claim. Well, I was about 3 months into rotating back to the States. My tour I was a short timer at that point almost. So I heard that another team had gone in to Razorback Ridge after a couple of months, 3 months, gone back into that area where we had been. And as they moved up the slope, they were climbing up toward the slope, a tiger jumped down from above them and grabbed the sergeant and disappeared, jumped again and disappeared down the slope. The sergeant screaming, and the other men followed the scream, went right after it, and the sergeant was still screaming as they knew where the tiger and he were going, but they couldn't do anything, too fast. And gradually the screams got less and less. They came to the clearing area, probably the same clearing that we had been inserted into, and there they saw a huge tiger standing over the sergeant, who was terribly mangled, and he was protecting his kill. Well, as they were pretty far away from him at that point, but they opened up hoping to scare him away at least, or hit him, scare him away, whatever. And they did open up, and the tiger disappeared into the jungle. Those poor guys, they got their sergeant, called in for a medevac helicopter to be extracted, and I was told that none of those men there, hardened combat Marines, ever went back into the jungle again. Well, this is a pretty hard story, right? I didn't tell it to anybody for years except for my wife, and she didn't believe me either, I don't think. Well, one day we were driving back from Vermont and we stopped at a gas station, and on the shelf was Vietnam magazine. And I was leafing through the magazine for a second, and I saw the written account of one of the guys who had been in that team, And what he said in the article was that the major had sent out a hunter-killer team to go hunt down that tiger and kill it. And they went out with 10 men, M14s, sniper rifles, as well as a canine dog team to track down that tiger. And they did hunt it down, and they shot it, and they brought it back to base camp. And in the Vietnam magazine article was a picture of them carrying the 300-pound tiger back, suspended on a pole between two men. And there's also additional photographs of the tiger with the canine dog, a German Shepherd like mix. Those were vicious animals. They had the vocal cords cut so they wouldn't make any noise, and they were trained to kill. Well, so I had that experience, and if necessary to prove my point, I could go back to the photos that were taken, and I put up some of them on my website, firstforcerecon.com, and so you can find them there if you're interested. They are rather gruesome, I have to say, but that was it. I remember the poem, "Tiger, tiger, burning bright in the forest of the night, what a mortal hand or eye could form thy fearful symmetry." Well, I don't remember the rest of it, but that's my story of a hunting tiger in Vietnam.